baby boomers in the US still hold over $80 trillion of wealth. If you add up the wealth held by the silent generation, Gen X and millennials in the US, it still comes to less than the total wealth held by baby boomers. That is an amazing statistic. And what it means for the industry is that the industry has been incented for 20 years really to focus on baby boomers to a certain extent. And so they could build a very fast growing business off baby boomers and a very large business purely off baby boomers and baby boomers' needs and tastes. And now they're having to adapt to an era in which Gen X wealth is increasing, millennial wealth is increasing, female wealth is increasing, and they have to look at other client types as well.
Buongiorno a tutti. Welcome to episode 26 of the Banker's Bookshelf. I am Paolo Sironi, your host, and today I have two amazing authors, the authors of Wealth Management with a Difference, Nick Rice and April Rudin. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having us, Paolo.
Great to see you, Paolo.
Guys, you all know that the Banker's Bookshelf is your podcast where we bring to you the authors and researchers of the most interesting publications, which are making a difference in the transformation of banking. And today we really want to make a difference in understanding how wealth management is transforming with technology, given new opportunities. I've read this book. It's my recommendation. It's brand new, just came out of the oven of Wiley, available on Amazon everywhere worldwide. And I invite you to read it because what Nick and April distill are opportunities. So every chapter is a different opportunity to excel in the transformation of wealth management. Wealth is also my turf. I built a fintech myself in wealth management back then in 2008. That was bought by IBM. I know it's a difficult place because it's very relationship oriented, but understanding digital and understanding technology will help wealth management networks to succeed. So I'm just excited to step into this work with April and Nick. And let me first ask them why you should all read this book. What is your elevator speech? Who wants to start?
Yeah.
Sure. So I think you want to read this book because it's about generational change in the wealth management industry and some of the changes that are already happening in the industry globally and are going to continue to happen over the next 5, 10, 20 years. And technology is an important part of that. But it's also more broadly about younger generations getting more wealth, Gen X and millennials getting more wealth globally, female investors getting more wealth, how you optimize your client engagement and what you offer to clients for that, as well as some of the other changes that we see, such as technology, such as the ultra wealthy getting wealthier, serving different client segments. On the technology side, I think one of the most fundamental things we see is how technology is automating technical administrative tasks and freeing up relationship managers and wealth managers' time to spend more time with clients, more on the EQ side, letting technology and increasingly AI automate some of the IQ elements and some of the technical issues that wealth managers face.
So if I can sum it up, Nick, it's not just technology per se. We are at a moment where there is a shift happening in the market. That's important because when markets shift, more opportunities are created that you can grab with technology. And April, I know that you've been working on this for so many years. So what's your elevator speech?
So my elevator pitch is everything Nick said. And this is the first book that's ever been written on the global wealth management industry. So there are plenty of books on investment advice, portfolio construction, ESG, and some of the other themes like that. But at such a transformational time, this is a playbook that everyone can get something out of, where it's all in one place. Also, an easy, quick to read that everyone from financial advisors to senior management can get something out of. And it's also the only book written from a global perspective. So regardless of your jurisdiction, there's something in there either for your jurisdiction or that you can learn. And so for that reason, I think it's a must read. One other point just to bankers, which is banking is basically a transactional relationship. that you have with clients, and every single bank just about has a wealth management business line, and that business line is relationship driven, and that is more recurring revenue and longer tail revenue for banks, and that's another reason why they should be developing their wealth management business.
So, true said, April, reading this book, I was mesmerized by so many data points that you bring to the surface, and there's no page without an interesting one. So, I invite everybody to read this one. It's like a Summa Theologica of wealth management worldwide. So, it's really interesting and also entertaining, because knowing both of you, that's a nice reading. But for the audience, well, you're well known, but just if you could summarize briefly your experience. We start from April, and then Rick, tell us about yourself.
Well, I don't want to talk about compliance, but that might be the first thing I talk about. Getting 80 people at different institutions and quote check and all of that was a compliance exercise. But I think that what was most interesting for me is that I was surprised by a lot of what we found, and a lot of what I knew was verified by all of these different senior executives. And so for me, that was a really rewarding experience, is the opportunity to talk to so many different people and see what experiences are shared, what experiences are different, and how to bring all of those things together in one book.
But April, on the side of being an author, how do you know so many people in wealth management? What is your main business in life?
Social media? No.
You go beyond that. Okay, that's just a border you broke.
We met online, Paolo. So my main business is wealth management, marketing, and high net worth marketing. I started my business in 2008 against global financial crisis, when most people thought that was a lousy time to start a business. It was actually a great time, where many different brands knew that they had to do something different to appeal to new generations and new types of investors. And it's taken a long time to actually get there. So I would say we're now at the point of action instead of conversation.
So let me ask the audience, do you remember which was your first Twitter? So my first Twitter message was with April Rudin. Do you remember yours? I also remember my first email when I was living in London in 1995, if I'm not mistaken. So I also remember my first email with my best friend, Stefano. So my first email with Stefano, my first tweet with April. And Nick, what about your role?
Yes, so I started off working with this industry at a similar time to April during the global financial crisis, but I was covering it as a journalist at FT on both sides of the Atlantic. And then I was executive director at UBS Global Wealth Management, the world's largest wealth management business, for 7.5 years. And in my latter role at Brunswick Group, I advise organizations, including wealth managers, on stakeholder engagement. And for us, the most important stakeholder in this book was really clients and engaging with the next generation of clients. But it's also about bringing through the next generation of employees in order to ensure that you have a succession plan for your business and then can engage with that new generation of clients appropriately.
So I can see that it was consequential for you guys to read this book. Now, there are, if I'm not mistaken, 10 chapters, right? And all of them are called opportunities, which I love very much, because what you're trying to explain is that there are changes in the marketplace globally, more intense in some areas than others, but it's a global shift. There are technological opportunities. Let's go out and grab them. So you talk about demographics, retirement, digital alternatives, Wealthtech purpose, international navigation of wealth and advisory changes, ultra wealthy. So the way they are changing their perspective on the investment side, the talent needed, and how they're transformed. And all of that is part of the book. But before we step into some of this, you also enriched this narrative with conversations, as April was mentioning at the start of this podcast. You talk to a lot of executives that matter worldwide. So you have a good understanding about what's in their mindset and their sensitivity about this topic. Can you just mention a couple of conversations that are worth reading in this book?
Yes, so I can start on that one. In our conclusion and in our introduction at various points throughout the book, we interview executives on technological change. And I won't name the actual executive, but there was one executive who said that technological changes in many respects can be a blessing because it's going to free up financial advisors to actually talk to their clients. And he said, I ran a business which had a lot of financial advisors in it, and the clients would come to me because the financial advisors didn't have time to talk to the clients about their problems because they were so busy. And so I think that quote and that statement really summed up the need for technological change in the industry and why it's so important.
April, your mention.
So a couple of things. One is I was going to ask you if you remember that robo advisor conference that we were at in London. And that was at the tail end of, I think, financial advisors being afraid or coming up with that term of robo advisor, and the theme that ended up dying, the theme of whether or not advisors would actually be replaced by technology, became a non-conversation as people understood that it was really an assistant and a way to help them get things done. One comment that stood out to me in the book was about retirement. And retirement is a really complex issue to unpack because we have different retirement schemes in different countries. We have so many people unprepared for retirement. We have advisors retiring where the average age of the advisor is 60 plus in most jurisdictions. And so that's coming together in many different ways. And most advisors are not retirement plan themselves. So it's difficult for them to advise on retirement, not to mention the fact their compensation structure is based on accumulation, not decumulation. So that becomes a conflict right there and confusing. But one of our interviewees, who's a behavioral economist, said that what he felt was really wrong with retirement was that investors come to their advisor and and the advisor asks them, "What's your risk tolerance?" As if they know what that means or what that is, or how would they even express that. And in his mind, that was wrong because the advisors need to tell clients, here's how much you need to save in order to have a comfortable retirement. They need to really give advice. And he said they should just tell them the number. And if they don't like it, give them a Xanax along with it. So that's
There must be an evil, if like, influenced by regulation here, talking about the risk profile. And, I know it does not really exist.
or you mean
Um,
yeah, that's all.
but so very interesting, and I like what you said about the accumulation. The accumulation, I did a lot of work in terms of also stochastic simulation about that. Is a very important point. Let's start from the basics. The fact that our societies, at least in the Western world, are getting older and more female. So, which are the demographical shifts that needs to be considered for the advisory roles in the future?
Well, Paolo, you mentioned stats in this book, and there are a lot of stats in this book. My personal favorite stat in this book is data from the Federal Reserve, which splits out wealth held by Americans according to generation. And my favorite stat in the book is $80 trillion. Baby boomers in the US still hold over $80 trillion of wealth. If you add up the wealth held by the silent generation, Gen X and millennials in the US, it still comes to less than the total wealth held by baby boomers. That is an amazing statistic. And what it means for the industry is that the industry has been incented for 20 years really to focus on baby boomers to a certain extent. And so they could build a very fast growing business off baby boomers and a very large business purely off baby boomers and baby boomers' needs and tastes. And now they're having to adapt to an era in which Gen X wealth is increasing, millennial wealth is increasing, female wealth is increasing, and they have to look at other client types as well.
So is it like a reshuffling of the percentages? So the new generation is getting wealthier, or is a transfer of wealth from the baby boomers to younger generations?
Well, it's about a wealth transition, we like to say, Paolo. It's partly about a wealth transfer, but it's bigger than that, right? So wealth is getting transferred between generations, as baby boomers, silent generation in particular, sadly, get older, pass on, or try to make gifts during their lifetime to account for that. But also younger generations and women are simply creating their own wealth through earning money, through entrepreneurship. So it's by no means just about the transfer. It's a broader transition that's happening here.
So, April, you've been studying a lot about the nuances in between talking to young people, talking to male or female, talking to rich and poor. So, what is the main element that people have to consider and change thinking about these demographical shifts to succeed going forward?
So, just adding to what Nick said, I think that the great wealth transfer has been really overhyped to the world. It's not one thing that's going to be happening and everyone's going to be instantly rich in some year or at some point in time. People are living longer. That's number one. So, whatever was hyped is not happening at the rate, as Nick was saying. I mean, that money is still
Luckily so.
that money is still with older generations. There's also a horizontal transfer where, sorry guys, as women live longer, that transfer is going to women before it's going vertical. So it's a horizontal and then a vertical shift. Women are now, sorry guys, 51% of the population. That makes men a niche at this point right now. So, to Nick's point, women are creating and controlling more wealth than ever before. And I don't think any bank has really figured out and cornered the market on how to serve female demographic, how to recruit talent from the female demographic. Something like 15% of financial advisors are women, yet that's not representative of the number of clients that they're serving. So I think there's a lot of work to be done there.
Okay, so and that is a matter of talent, so understanding and training people to understand the shift, and also technology to capture these transformations. So let's jump into the first opportunity, which is about digital. And that's about how you build an online presence that reaches out to new clients compared to the, next of kin. So your limited network. So April, how do you believe the wealth managers, not just of the future, of today, needs to do to make sure that they can make it happen the right way? What would you recommend them? Can they find in this book that inspires them to
So I
take
like to
action?
say people vet you before they've met you, which is something you and I talked about. The behavior today is if we were meeting in New York or Milan to go to a restaurant, you and I would be looking up that restaurant online, checking the menu and figuring out what we're ordering ahead of time. So I think that's one behavioral change that people need to understand is it's not so much that they are selecting financial advisors, but they're vetting them and trying to figure out whether it's something that they feel is a good fit. So, one area that we talk about is personal brand versus firm brand. So,
Okay.
people want to work with people that they know and like. And that's one thing that becomes very important is to put your personal brand out there so people have an idea of who you are before they've met you.
Which is actually means being authentic, right? It's not just marketing yourself, it's figuring out which is your voice and convey your voice in a way that can be recognized. So Nick,
Also, sorry, one other thing I was going to add is having enough, when I first started, Facebook was clearly for personal and LinkedIn was clearly for professional. And today there's a blurring of those where people understand that LinkedIn is also about, your blending of your personal and professional self. And for some people, that's at different points, which is fine, how much they want to reveal or not reveal. But talking about your personal passions or your travel interests or where you went to school or where you lived simply become conversation starters. And so it's really important to include those kinds of facts and information on your digital profile.
and by the way, if you ask a private banker what they talk to clients when they reach out to them for their investment decision making, most of the conversation is not about the markets, it's about the people, right? So it's about understanding that we are on the same boat and we understand each other to make better decisions. So Nick, April mentioned the accumulation problem, right? That is an issue. She actually said that there is an incentive problem because most of the industry is about percentages of asset under management as embedded fees. So the more you invest, the more you make in terms of money, but there's a time where you need to disinvest, you need to consume, right? And that is equally relevant, understanding how to do that, especially after your productive work life is over. So what people can learn about retirement by reading this book?
Yes, so I mean, it's about the retirement of clients, but it's also about the retirement of advisors, right? So the average age of an advisor in the US and in the UK has remained in the mid 50s for around 25 years. And part of the reason for that is that the clients are themselves older, right, in certain respects. And if you take that midpoint in terms of an advisor age, it's also, not far off the midpoint in terms of the client age as well, right? But that also means that your average advisor is closer to retirement than your average worker in other areas and in other industries. I'm sorry. And so succession planning does become increasingly important, both in terms of figuring out who your next crop of advisors are going to be when your current crop retires, but also in terms of figuring out, of course, who your next clients are going to be when the current crop of clients retires and starts decumulating their wealth.
So, April, how much is retirement an important topic in the wealth management industry?
I would say it's one of the most important and probably one of the most avoided topics. And it's somewhat limited to the discussion about investors, right, rather than advisors. And it's really that intersection, as Nick was saying. It's the time point in time. We're at the point in time where all of this is happening. It's also confounded in the US and more in Europe and Asia, the huge amount of M&A activity that's happening. So that's one of the ways that advisors are exiting their businesses, is through the M&A process, which is not actually retirement, but they're selling off their book of business and turning it over to someone else to manage who may or may not be a good fit with the next group that's buying that business. So all of these different things become opportunities for advisors to capture more clients. And that's what we're trying to shine a light on. If you look at the statistic that 75% of widows are changing advisors within a year of their husband's demise, you might think as an advisor that that's a real problem, but you also might think that that's a real opportunity, because that means that so many different women of retirement age likely are looking for new advisors. And so that sheds a light on the importance of your messaging and marketing.
Hopefully looking for a new husband as well. So it's a compounded opportunity. But
Understood. Yeah.
all of these opportunities require technology to be grabbed at scale and efficiently. So you talk about Wealthtech in the third chapter. What is Wealthtech?
So that's a great question. I'll just bite that off. Nick and I just presented our book at CFP Board's national conference in the US. And I went to a session that was on AI and fintech. And one brave advisor asked the first question, and that was, can someone explain to me how AI is used in financial planning? And so I think that there's not a great understanding amongst advisors of exactly how these technologies will help them or what they actually do. I remember being at a compliance conference once, and another brave advisor asked, "Where is the cloud?" And everyone started laughing, but I realized that there's a need for education and a real gap in terms of what advisors know and how they understand the technology, and how some of the buyers at enterprise firms and banks are buying and thinking about how these tasks are done. So the need for training, I think, is highlighted, and a real opportunity to bring people, the users, right up to speed.
So, April, do you believe a TikTok avatar can be a good advisor?
So, it's interesting because I was actually thinking of you, because when people talk about social media and wealth management, there's so many different ways of thinking about it. You see the big asset managers on TikTok, they're not giving investment advice, but they're really more about branding, right? Have the younger generations heard of some of the asset managers? And so they want to get their brands out there, and they want to be perceived as a more modern brand and attract a younger talent. There's also an opportunity to use social media for financial literacy information, right? There's so many opportunities and so many ways to use social media. There's not one, but firms need to figure out what are the most productive and where can they get a return on investment, and how can individuals use it to their advantage. People like you, Pete.
It
Yeah.
seems that also Mr. Beast has a space in the US to open a bank, but that would be the other discussion. So, Nick, what about technology and wealth management? You also work for financial institutions. So, what is your key message here for the advisory networks?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the fascinating things about technology is not only adoption in and of itself, and in terms of automating tasks and so forth, but also it drives a lot of the other opportunities that we see in the market, right? So there's been a graduation towards alternative investments on behalf of advisors, but also on behalf of clients, and a lot of that has been enabled by technology, right? It was hard for financial advisors and wealth management clients to access things like private markets until the technological plumbing was created to enable them to do so more easily, right? It was previously the domain of mostly of institutional investors. You look, for instance, clients who want to invest their wealth according to a specific purpose. There is technology now which enables you to invest, to understand the footprint of companies that you want to invest in across all kinds of environmental and social parameters. So technology is this force in and of itself, but there are also specific applications in other opportunities in the industry which are equally critical.
So to me, I remember in 2019, I opened most of the BlackRock conferences with my keynotes in literature. And I used to explain that this is an industry, the one of wealth management, where few people pretend to know too much about the future and they know nothing. And the majority of people are scared not to know about the future, but they know enough to be cautious. So the point is that when the incentive is accumulation investment, people tend to get into a fear of missing out or the pushing mechanism, while there has to be more balance in between the advisor and the client in discussing what matters for them in terms of investing, saving, and then the accumulating. And I think that the technology for me is that opportunity that allows many advisors to be more comfortable in having that conversation where they themselves are humble in front of the uncertainty of financial market dynamics to be smarter at providing advice to clients because the conversation will be more substantiated and less emphatic as they have a need to sell, in essence. So to me, that would be the best way of using technology to increase the advisory conversation. Now, if you can distill in a single concept, what is the most important message that financial advisors or even their clients, because this is good for everybody. It's not a book, folks online. It's not a book just for financial advisors. It's a good book for every person who wants to invest and deal with the advisory process, every banker in general that might consider wealth management as an opportunity to expand the banking relationship, because not all banks are good at advisory networks. So if there's one message, whomever is if you like, subject of that message, which one that would be that you want to spare? Nick, you start.
Seize new opportunities, right? A lot of people in this industry focus on a specific playbook, which they developed over many, many years and which has been successful for them. But there's a need to diversify beyond that playbook into other areas as wealth shifts of new generations, new different types of clients, and there are new ways of doing business. Advisors preach diversification in terms of clients' investment portfolios, and wealth managers do too. It's now incumbent on them to diversify what they do commercially a little bit to take into account some of these new emerging areas.
So then, Nick, if it's about opportunities, that means there are opportunities in demographical shifts, in the usage of Wealthtech technology, in the retirement space, in thinking about alternative products, in using digital to reach out to clients, in understanding purpose for the individual clients, in the internationalization, if you like, because money is moving across borders, in understanding the need of the ultra wealthy, which are actually growing on a planet, and in the end, in figuring out what is your best talent to basically be successful in the job. April, what is your key message?
My key message is now. So
Now.
being in the industry and so much conversation, my key message is now, and that's one of the reasons why we were happy to produce this playbook so that we could get people actually moving and stopping with the conversation because I think that all of these points have been proven. I mean, when I first started, people were asking whether or not LinkedIn was a good idea, whether or not, people would ever use a technology platform, how would mobile be working, and the answer is it's now. It's not limited to. One other point I would make too is it's not limited to the younger generation. I think that's another myth that we want to bust. So if we just look at the demographics on this podcast right now, we are all technologically advanced. We don't have just, Gen Zers using technology. And so the idea would be that your clients are doing it and you should be doing it, or you're missing the opportunity.
So, April, I like your message very much because investing is about the future, but advising is about the now. So have that conversation now with your client, make that change now to be successful going forward. So thank you very much for this conversation. Wealth Management with a Difference is the Banker's Bookshelf recommendation this month. The book is now available since a few days on Amazon worldwide. Make sure that you sell your copy and read it in your spare time. Is a very interesting piece of work. As I said, plenty of ideas and plenty of data points about wealth management transformation worldwide. You will just get entertained in going through the various pages. I remind everybody the Banker's Bookshelf is your podcast where we invite the most interesting authors and researchers to learn about their books and publications that are a must read to understand the banking present and its fit the future. Arrivederci a tutti and listen to the jingle.